Today, me and 3 of my brothers are going to tackle a massive challenge of building Chen's Island. It's going to be huge, and I'm not actually sure if we have enough pieces. Let the challenge begin right now. We have a ton of Lego here, ready to build Chen's Island.
When we got together to figure out who would do what part, I was given the snake pit, Dareth's cave, and a couple of the tournaments between the champions. So let's get building. It all starts with this. It's a super useful piece. Plus, it gets the perfect angle for this segment we're gonna build. So we started off with those and a Technic substructure, figuring out where exactly these A-frame pieces needed to go. The first thing I'm starting with is the snake pit. And I love snakes, so this might turn out to be one of my favorite parts of the whole thing. I scattered lots of bones around this area. I also added a couple poles with Mia in there. The walls for the snake pit were made of the nougat bricks, a lot of which you can find in the bookstore Ninjago building. I also tiled off the floor and also a couple strips of black tiles around to look like reinforcement on the walls. The pillars holding up the ceiling are actually snot built. The snake was so much fun to build, and probably my favorite thing about it is the tongue, red flare piece. I actually made the snake segmented so that part of him can fit in my section and another part, the tail, can come out in Brick Legend's center section. Then we began on the mountain. Honestly, I think this went through almost all of my gray slopes. As I'm building it, I'm gonna mix in a lot of green just to give it that mossy, overgrown look. For the water, I'm using the same technique as they do in the Ninjago city sets. As for the waterfall, I decided to build my own out of bricks. It has lots of texture, makes it look like the water is actually flowing downward. I love the versatility of Lego bricks. The first one I'm gonna work on is the Nero and Blobo fight around this massive rock. Around the rock is this sort of a Zen garden, so it has all these little patterns on the floor. So I'm using a lot of circular plates. I capped off with a J blade, added Blobo and Nero, and now they can fight. Going farther up the mountain, I'm adding a patch of bamboo. Under the waterfall, I'm gonna add the cave where Dareth and Nia hide out with the Ninja DBX. This thing isn't quite big enough to actually hold the Ninja DBX, so we're just gonna have Dareth in there, jamming away on his broom. Finally, we reached the top of the mountain. Here, I really want to challenge myself to build a good-looking cherry blossom tree. The base of this I kind of based off the bonsai tree that Lego actually made. I'm adding tons of little branches that we can attach all the pink cherry blossom leaves to. All in all, I think this tree turned out pretty well. We can add the jade blade on top, and Gravis and Griffin Turner can fight. Last but most definitely not least, we need to make this look like a jungle. One of my favorite things was the flower I built using the orange leaf pieces, the eggshell, and the cherry sticking out the top. And now we have one of the coolest battles. We have Garmadon and Klaus battling it out. I'm actually going to take a transparent purple piece from one of my old spinner sets, but it has some printing on it, so I'm going to have to go clean that off first. After doing that, I finished the portal with some black spikes circling around it and attached it to the base. And with that, my section is complete.
We are going to be building the center section of Chen's Island. I filled a 48 by 48 area with a big Technic structure, and then I covered it with dark tan plates. In this show, there are a bunch of trapdoors all over Chen's Island. When you fall into one, you go down into underground dungeons. The first thing I'm going to make is 3 prisons, but I'm going to use these really cool wooden doors. Inside the first prison, I'm going to put a spider web with some spiders crawling over the place. The second prison is going to be the one where Zane is held captive. Now, there's no way of escaping. But wait, in the next prison, we're actually going to build Pixel. Well, not necessarily Pixel, a bunch of different parts from Pixel. And in the show, Pixel kind of rescues Zane. Now I need to make a whole structure all the way around. Then I made a bunch of 7 stud long cave panel pieces to go along the wall. From the outside, it looks pretty bad. We're gonna have other modulars covering each side, so you won't really be able to see that. I also added 3 doors.
3, 2, 1.
For the center section, I put an off-limits zone work area there, and we'll get to that later. After much trial and error, repositioning Technic pieces, I was finally able to add 2 Technic trapdoors. Now it's time to work on the courtyard. So I ran upstairs and stole my mom's bonsai tree, dumped out all the little pebble pieces, and started covering the courtyard with these detail pieces. Leading up to the main building, we're going to make a cool purple and gold walkway. I made 2 little stone areas where they could plant trees. One more thing I want to add to this courtyard is this green dragon lion statue. But now it's time to move on to the most challenging part of this. I have to build 3 different buildings. I decided to start with the center building. This would kind of be the throne room. For the walls, the main color is going to be light gray, and then I'm going to use details. I wanted to build a cool snake pattern out of cheese wedges and different pieces like that on the floor. So me and my brother Jonathan are going to challenge ourselves who can build the best one. His honestly looks way better. So I gave up and let him install his cool snake pattern into the floor. The first thing we need to tackle is Chen's massive chair. Sadly, I only was able to add 4 buttons. Bruh. For the second layer, I got out a ton of my tan pieces and started building around. Along on the front and the back, I put 2 red lattice windows. Inside, I put this giant bell that the Anaconda warriors absolutely pound on. I got out the 200 little hump pieces I had ordered from Bricklake. I attached those to the roof, and then I made 4 columns coming down to cover up those little gaps in between. Then I added another row of little window frames. Finally, I made another little roof on top and put 2 Anaconda banners. The building on the right is where all the ninjas have their super fancy dorm room suites. And the first room is going to be a bit of a lobby area with some stairs going up to the next floor. Then you can open up a rice paper door and go into Lloyd's suite. So for every one of the suites I make, I've got a carpet piece for the floor and then their emblem that I can put on the wall. I made different beds for Lloyd, Kai, Skylar, and Cole.
Wow.
For these next 2 rooms, I added rice paper doors on the front with little balconies coming off. I used gold nozzle pieces as railing. So the room on the left is Kai's, putting in this cool lattice wall, and then I moved to Skylar's room. If you remember in this show, there are actually little peek holes in Chen's eyes. Now it's time to move on to the next level. For Cole's room, he's got a totally stone bed and then a cabinet full of delicious desserts and foods. I also added the carpet and a little dresser. Then moving on to Jay's, this was a super fun one. I had to add a hot tub jacuzzi in the corner. I added a TV and a super cool chair using these cool angle pieces. So for the roof of this building, this one was highly inspired by the Temple of Air Jitsu, and I added some gold trim details along the front. The cafeteria was pretty easy and looks basically the same as the bottom layer of the dorm room, with light gray going along it. But inside, I made some booths where people can sit, a nice buffet, because this is a 5-star cafeteria.
What's the matter with you?
I made a little awning using next to my shields, which looks really cool. The next level was Klaus's spellbook room, and I also put on that cool sticker of that giant snake. My favorite part of this room was this really cool bookcase I made. Now it's complete and it's time to work on the final roof here. I also added lattice pieces along the very top for detail, and now it's time to add the final touches to this whole area. So around on the back, I made a giant tree to make it look like it was kind of going into jungle. For the final touch, we need to add some brick walls going up along either side. I decided to go with dark tan and olive green bricks. Now this was complete. Now it's time to see what Jonathan will build.
I'm Jonathan, and I'm going to be building the right side of this MOC, which is a huge mountain with 3 iconic scenes from the season. So like Carlin's part on the opposite side, I had to build a little Technic structure at a 45-degree angle to my main base. After that, I plotted out where I wanted my first scene to be on the bottom layer. Then I started making the rocky cliff face. I used plates to make a layer that I could build on. I made a whole bunch of different types of foliage separately. I made some bamboo. I just had like this pile of plant pieces, and then I just started putting them all over this. Now it's time to turn this MOC around and look at the first scene we have, and that is Chen's Noodle Factory. One of the main pieces I used for building the bulk of these walls were some big sand blue wall panels, and then we started working on some of the factory details. There's like this big machine with noodles coming in from the back and little boxes going by and getting filled in with noodles and coming out the side, ready to be packaged up and sent to Ninjago City. I added in some workers. Over here on this other part of the wall, I made a really cool function where Cole gets a bunch of flour dumped on him. You can turn the stump up in the jungle and it'll turn Cole to covered in flour instantly. And I built a little walkway kind of going up above it. For those of you who have seen the show and know what I'm talking about, we've got hidden parts of the boulder blaster laying around in this model. Once I was done with the factory, I kept building it up with more rock pieces into another room. And here I built a blue crystal room where Master Chen transforms into an anaconda warrior. I covered it in tiles. Behind the walls, I built white pieces because that just really helps the blue pop. I made 2 blue pillars with chains hanging from them. So once I built the mountain up, I started working on the last and possibly my favorite scene in this section, and that is the volcano scene where Kai and Ash fight out. So I started experimenting with sideways built panels, and it turned out really good. There are a couple little flames bursting out. On the outside of the volcano, I made a little bit of lava kind of dribbling down the mountainside. And then I started building up the mountain around the volcanic basin. And to do this, I used some kind of special techniques, angling them using mixel joints to just give the mountain a really cool, unique shape. I added a few more trees going up. Down in the volcano, I built a little column that has the jade blade actually stuck in it. And then up above, I used these rope pieces with bars built into them to make a really cool rope bridge. And here we have Kai and Ash getting ready to fight. Finally, we can add this section to the rest of the island.
Hello, I'm Anthony from the Brick Epic YouTube channel. My part is going to be the dock, the gate, and the front wall. I started out with the base and covered it with transparent blue tiles. And then I started working on the dock area. Around the dock, I added some foliage and some white pieces to look like waves. I used light gray tiles for the steps and dark gray for the rest of it. Both the front and the back of the wall, I just used snot, which means I just put dark tan plates along it. In the show, there are these really cool snake designs on the front of the wall. Recreating this was really hard for me. I ended up using chrome gold pieces that I got from Monkey King's Warrior Mech and created this magnificent snake design. The doors were pretty cool and simple. Surrounding the door is a Chinese pagoda-like facade. Now all we have to do is finish off the top of the wall. I used about 30 or more black window frames, and then inside of there I stuck a bunch of orange lanterns. Brick Legends gave me these awesome anaconda banner pieces. Now it's complete and we can add it to the island.
This is officially the biggest MOC we've ever made, and I cannot wait for my next video where we can show it off in all its glory. See you next week.
Subscribe.